'Cause even when I'm low, He restores my soul.
Alright, so we got the belly pan off, and we're gonna start with this valve right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pump down the whole circuit. We got one running cold, one running warm. Before I do anything, I want to pump down the whole circuit, and I want to check these screens right here. This is just the way I like to do it. I know we have airflow across the case. Well, not right here because I have this fan unplugged, but throughout the case and the air curtain, we have good airflow. But this one wasn't running warm, this one was running too cold. So we have this one. Look at that frost pattern right here. That's telling me that this hadn't fed in a while. Not to say that it's not ever feeding, but it's choked off. Anyway, I got this fan unplugged as well. We're gonna check the airflow. This is the case that's running too warm. So we'll go ahead and check the airflow. Obviously, there's barely any right there because the fan's unplugged. But throughout the case, we have good airflow. Now, I believe this case, the A case, is actually running very well. So we're gonna leave it alone. But who knows? Honestly, when I have it pumped down, that's just one more screen to check. So I'm gonna pump it down and pull these screens out of here, and we're gonna clean them and make sure that they're not dirty. I'm telling you guys this. A lot of times these screens are dirty, and because people are too lazy to pump the units down, I hate to say that way, but it's just true. There's some people out there that are too lazy to pump a unit down. The first thing they'll do is start opening up this valve. So let's go get it pumped down. We'll show you how to pump it down, and we'll come back with it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pump this circuit down. We're on circuit 4 right here. And we have our blue hose hooked up to our low side of the gauge on our suction line. This is our suction. This is our suction header right here. And this is our suction line. This is our suction coming back from the case into the header. We see we have our EPR, evaporator pressure regulator, which regulates the pressure. On this side, where the manifold is, it goes down and is connected to all the suction in bells of the compressors. Well, that's our rack pressure side, okay? Now anything below is our regulated pressure side. Remember, temperature and pressure have a perfect marriage. If we can bring the pressure up, we can bring the temperature up. If we bring the pressure down, then we'll bring the temperature down. By bringing the coil pressure down, it drops the coil temp down. Therefore, the space will follow. So we want to have our, I'll call this the store side. Our gauge is on the store side. What we want to do is, because this is our suction line, we want to leave the suction line open. Well, if you look down here, this is our liquid line. This is after the condenser. So the compressors right here discharge out, discharge gas, high pressure gas. It goes into the condenser. We'll talk about separators later, but just for the sake of being quick with this, it goes into the condenser. It travels through a series of rings and runs, and the fans create a heat exchange, expel the heat into the atmosphere, and because this is happening, that high pressure gas is being condensed down into a high pressure liquid. That's our subcool, okay? So we're coming out of this manifold as a liquid. And if you can kind of see back there, we go to a liquid receiver, and then out, that's the big horizontal thing down there. And then after the receiver, we come down the line. It's hard to tell, but just quickly, this is our liquid. Then it comes into a manifold. From this manifold, we branch off into different circuits. Okay, so what we want to do is, this circuit's going down into the store, to the evaporator. So we have our high side gauge hooked up to it. We want to stop the flow of refrigerant going down into the case, okay? So we'll turn this ball valve off. All right, so now we're hindering that liquid from going down into the case. You wanna make sure it's all the way off. So from this point down, whatever liquid's left in this line, all the way down into the evaporator, is gonna be sucked out by our suction. The ball valve is still open. Now, this EPR has a high pressure pilot line going to it. We can shut this valve off right here. Remember I said this is holding a back pressure. So this EPR is set to a certain pressure. If I drive this in right here, this pilot valve, then this EPR becomes null and void. It's no different than having a wide open pipe. So with this being closed, we have no back pressure allowing this EPR to regulate. So why would I want to close this when I'm pumping down? Well, because we want to try to get the pressure down as low as we possibly can to rack pressure. So let me go ahead and take this cap off. I'm gonna have to use two hands, and I'm gonna show you how to drive this in. And I'll show you, okay, so right now, with it, it's 55 pounds, okay? Well, when I'm gonna drive this in, I'm gonna show you what the suction pressure is. So the lower the suction pressure, the more gas we can essentially get out of the evaporator, right? So let me get it going, and I'll get back with you. Okay, so we got the cap off of this pilot line right here. So what we're gonna do is drive it in, okay? We'll just drive it right in. That's gonna bring our pressure down to rack pressure. The lower the pressure, the more efficiently and effectively we can get the gas pumped out of it, and the lower we can get the gas pumped out of it. So now we wait. There's gonna be a moment in time where this is gonna equalize, and we have it here now. So we're equalized, okay? So that means that we're not gonna be able to get any lower than that. So once these two are the same, we wanna go ahead and shut off our ball valve. We went ahead and shut it off already. At that moment, we would shut off our ball valve. And that's how you effectively pump down a system. To recap, shut off the flow of refrigerant going to the case. Leave the flow of refrigerant open coming back from the case, and that will suck it out. When your liquid side becomes equalized with your suction side, it can no longer suck any more out. Shut off your suction ball valve, okay? Remember, if you have an EPR, you can get it a little bit lower by driving this valve in. But you shut off, now whatever's left in this line is trapped in there. There's no more getting in and no more coming out. So you would hook up your recovery machine, suck it out with your recovery machine, right back into the system until you can get it down to zero, and then you're safe and able to do whatever work you need to do. So, all right, so we're back down in the case. We're gonna go ahead and pull this TX. We got it pumped down. We're gonna go ahead and pull this TXV out. Check the screens. We're gonna do it for all the cases on the circuit. I figured it's too easy. There's only 2 more to check, and we'll just pull them all while we have it pumped down. It takes a while to pump stuff down sometimes, so we want to, you know, use that time effectively. And if we can get all the screens cleaned at one time, then we're doing a lot better. There's a hand valve right here. You can shut this off. I already did. You can shut it off just as a safety, just to. So we'll go ahead and pull that screen. I have new screens, so I'm gonna put a new screen in it, and then I'm gonna show you what the old screen looked like. Okay, so we got the new screen installed. It's just a 5/8 wrench. I'll show you this way. Just a 5/8 wrench that fits on here. A lot of times you'll have to hold backup on this valve because we don't want to crack any of these lines or any of the distributor lines going in. So we got the new screen in there. Let me give you an idea of what this old screen looked like. Let's see if I can get it to focus here. Look at that. Look at this screen. All right, we're back at the rack. We're gonna go ahead and put this case back in service, so that way we can finish troubleshooting it. We obviously know what the problem is. Those screens were absolutely garbage. Now, I'm not gonna stop there because I want the cases to run efficiently. So we're gonna put the circuit back in service, and we're gonna check our superheat on all the cases and make sure everything's right. But before we do that, I need to let it run a little while, and I want to set my EPR to the proper pressure. Once we have it set to the proper pressure, then we can move on down the case. If the coil doesn't have the design working pressure, then it's not going to function properly. We could get it to hit temp, but hitting temperature and hitting temperature efficiently and properly is 2 different things. Sure, we can open the TXV wide open and get it and make it flood and everything else and hit temp, but our objective is not only to hit the temp, but to hit it efficiently. That way we can preserve our rack, we can preserve minimize our service calls, callbacks. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do, I like to start with the liquid line here. We're gonna open it up, okay? Why do I like to start with the liquid line? Well, I like to let the pressure build up on the low side. See if we can get it to build some pressure here. Let's see. Okay, so I need to turn my switch back on. That way we can energize our coils. Now we ought to start building pressure on this suction side. I like to let the pressure build. Maybe some fantasy in my mind that if I can get enough back pressure before I open up this suction line, that if there's any type of oil that's trapped in that evaporator, my hopes is that it would help to push it back to the compressors by building up a good back pressure and then throwing open that suction. You know, in my mind, I would think that would help. Does it really? It has in the past. when you have a little oil in the evaporator, if you shut your suction line off, you let it build as high as you can get it, open it up, and you repeat that process 2 or 3 times, and it seems to get most of that oil out. But it's just the way I like to do it. So we'll let it build up a little bit more pressure. We'll see how high we can get it. As high as we can get it, or as long as we can take it. And I'm the type of person that likes to keep moving, so I'm getting a tad bit impatient. So I think that's just fine. We're gonna go ahead and open up. Oh, you heard it? Like it sucked through a massive straw. Here we go. So our suction pressure is coming back down. We're gonna let it run a while. We're gonna let it balance out. We're gonna let the temp start to come down and see what's gonna happen. We'll let it get to about, if we can, 10 degrees within target temp. And then we'll go ahead and try to set our EPR, make sure it's where it needs to be. And then after that, we'll go down and check our superheat. Okay, so on this case, we have an active set point of about, of 32. Now this control temp right here, this is kind of an average, but our set point is 32. So a good rule of thumb is if they want the set point at about 32, then a good rule of thumb, this is not always the case, but a good rule of thumb, a good starting point would be 10 degrees colder on your coil. So if they want a set point of 32, then I want my coil temp to be roughly 22. That's a good starting point. It might give or take a little bit, but that's a good starting point. 8 to 10 TD. I would probably start with 10. If I have to bring it up a little bit, drop it a little bit, that's fine. But maybe we'll start with 10. So I would want to set my evaporator pressure regulator, this, at a pressure that coincides to an evaporator temperature of 22 degrees. So with these gauges, it calculates that already. So I know that a 21 or 22 degree evaporator is going to be roughly 57, 58 pounds. Well, if I didn't have these fancy gauges, I would simply go to my PT chart. I'm assuming everyone knows what a PT chart is, but if you don't, it's a pressure temperature chart. Depending on what refrigerant you're running, it tells you what that pressure is and converts it to saturation temperature. So right now, as you can tell, our pressure's a little bit low. We want to raise the EPR up until we are maintaining about 22 pounds, give or take just a little bit, but 22 is where we want to start. All right, so one reason why it might be a little low could be due to the fact that I didn't open my pilot valve back up. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up. If I can not hit everything right here, we'll open it back up. That way we can put our EPR into service. All right. We'll go ahead and let's see if I can't find my little wrench. See if we can't tighten up this packing a little bit. Yeah, all right. Try to prevent any kind of leaks. Go ahead and place our cap back on. It's been leaking a little bit, you can tell. Alright. We'll get it snug later, but that's snug enough for now. Alright. So now that we have it back, it looks like our pressure's about where it needs to be. We'll let it simmer right there for a little while, and we'll see what our cases do. If we can keep our pressure right there, we'll be doing just fine, I believe. We'll get down there, we'll check our superheat. So it's gonna fluctuate a little bit, but that's okay. All right. Okay, we're back in the store. We got our gauges hooked up. We have our suction hooked up to the suction line. We have a temp probe on that suction line as close to the evaporator as we can. Okay, so we're gonna check our superheat, our TXV superheat. All right, how do we check that? We take if you don't have these fancy gauges that do it for you. Now we just put these on, so we're not gonna adjust the superheat or anything right away. We're gonna let it settle down a little bit. So we take our suction pressure. You have to use a PT chart. My gauges do this for me, but in the past I would just do it manually. Anyway, take your suction pressure. You have to convert that to evaporator temperature, which is our SST for whatever refrigeration that you have. So that's our number we're looking at. We got a 23-degree coil. Okay, now we have our temp probe on the suction line. This is our temp probe reading right here, 37 degrees. You want to take the difference between your evaporator temperature and your suction line temperature, and that's going to give you your superheat. So we're gonna try to get this superheat down. I'd like to see about 8. I really would like to see about 8. If I can get 9 or 10, I probably wouldn't cry about it, but I would like to see about 8. So we're gonna let it sit for a little while, then we'll make some adjustments if we need to. We don't want to adjust it right away. We want to let it settle down and see where it ends up. So while we wait for that, the way we're gonna make an adjustment right here is we're gonna take this cap off, and there's a stem right here. If we drive the stem in, we're gonna raise up the superheat, which is gonna slowly restrict the amount of liquid we have going to this coil. If we pull the stem out, then we'll drop the superheat and it will allow more flow through the coil. Now one might think the more flow the better, but that's not absolutely true. What we want to do is, if our superheat's too high, then we have this whole coil right here. It goes underneath here, the length of the case, that's being wasted. We're barely getting through the coil before this liquid that we're feeding it is evaporated into a gas. Therefore, the amount of heat that we're removing from the space is going to drop. So we're not being efficient. The goal is to try to maximize the evaporator. So if our superheat's too high, then before it gets anywhere, you're maybe covering an eighth of the coil before it's turned into a vapor. The lower the superheat, if we have too low of a superheat, then we're not making that heat exchange at all, and we're sending liquid back to the compressors, which a compressor does not like to pump on liquid. It will destroy the heads, just a matter of time. So what's the goal? Well, we always want to be in the range of what the manufacturer specs. That's fine. They're going to give you, in some cases, 4 to 6 on a freezer, some cases on a On a medium temp, you're gonna see maybe 8 to 12, something like that. Well, in my mind, we want to be closer to the bottom number. That way we know that we're using as much of this coil as we can, but yet we're just before sending liquid back to that compressor. That's gonna make sure that our coil is being efficient. And another thing that's gonna happen is it's gonna cause our suction gas to be cool going back to our compressor, and we're gonna get some good compressor superheat as well. So we'll get this cap off right here, and we'll make some adjustments if we need to. Okay, so this is what the stem looks like in a TXV. You drive it out to lower it, drive it in to raise it. So far we're maintaining about 9 degrees of superheat or so, and when it starts to feed, it gets down to about 7, 8, something like that. I'm not gonna mess with this. I think it's fine. We're just gonna let it run, and we're gonna continue to monitor it. I mean, it's obvious what the problem was on these cases is the screens were absolutely filthy, and I did have to go back to the rack and raise the pressure up a tad bit. That was it. I think I raised it up maybe 2 or 3 more pounds. I guess these cases are designed to have a little bit smaller of a TD. So, but ultimately, I think we can obviously tell that the issue was dirty screens across the board. And yeah, that's it. Until next time.